All right. Well, I would say we're getting ready to get started, but we are having issues with internet already. Fantastic. When we start the stream up, and already I see about 25% dropped frames and dropping to 0 bitrate. We're off to a fantastic start. Seriously, what is going on here? OBS, you're doing it to both Twitch and YouTube, so it's hopefully not on my side. My internet seems fine. Yeah, everything seems to be loading reasonably quickly. Let's see how a speed test works. I mean, I'm getting good up and down. So there's something upstream that is getting in the way. See if I can go live. Does not seem to be enjoying that. Well, isn't this fun? Oh, are we on the upswing? I can see it going into the yellow and the green. Oh, OBS. Have you come through for us? Finally. Finally. Alright. We're going to try and see that we can go live on the monitor screen and go live on the others. And let's transition in. Welcome back. Tonight is our fourth and probably last night reading from Hermann Hesse's Demian. Now, hopefully, the last few minutes have been an exercise in working out the gremlins, and we should have reasonably good connection for the remainder of the night. Who am I kidding? This is hopeful. This is likely to be how we are going to be. Yeah, it pretty much as soon as 8 o'clock rolled around, it dropped down to about, 0 bitrate for a few minutes. So that was fun. That was fun. But I think we are stable. I'm seeing no additional dropped frames for the time being. I just need to make sure that the background monitors are happy and healthy. So far, so good. I'm showing live on both. Well, that was fun. That was fun. Not the worst of our nights. Not the best of our nights either. But not the worst. Oh, I'll take it. I'll take it. All right, so we've got, I think, 2 chapters left in Demian. There's just 2. There's the next one, which will be Mother Eve, and the final chapter, just, I think, beginning of the end, which is rather ominous. So, let's go ahead and see what further trouble Emil can get up to. Because we've seen his life has taken all sorts of twists and turns so far. We've seen the development of a very strange fixation with his own art, which I'm not going to judge. People will... You draw what comes into your head, all right? But let's see how things can continue to devolve. Or will he find his own way and grow into a respectable adult at this point? Respectable is a loaded term, but we'll see how it shapes out. So, let's shift over into our book nook and see where the remainder of this story will take us. Oh, hello, Simba. Yes. Good evening. You're lucky that my camera for tracking is up high, because when you stand in front of the keyboard, they can still get the tracking. Yes. I do need at least one hand on the keyboard, though. Yeah. Just sit down, please. Alright, so let's pick back up with Chapter 7 of Demian. If I recalibrate, his face is right up in the business, so he might just control the model, yeah. I'm not sure how VTube Studio manages complete flips 180. If we could just start experimenting. Alright, so, Chapter 7, Mother Eve. In the holidays, I went once to the house in which, years before, Max Demian and his mother had lived. An old lady was walking in the garden. I entered into conversation and learned that the house belonged to her. I inquired after the Demians. She remembered them very well, but she did not know where they were living at that moment. As she felt my interest, she took me into the house, searched through a leather album, and showed me a photograph of Demian's mother. I scarcely had any recollections of what she was like, but when I saw the little picture, my heart stood still. It was my dream picture. There it was, the tall, almost masculine woman's figure, resembling her son, with traits of motherliness, traits which denoted severity and deep passion. Beautiful and alluring, beautiful and unapproachable, demon and mother, destiny and mistress, that was she! I was filled with a wild wonder when I learned that my dream picture lived on Earth. There was a woman, then, who looked like that, who bore my fate in her features. Where was she? Where? And she was Demian's mother! I started on my travels soon after. A strange journey. I went restlessly from place to place as impulse directed, always in search of this woman. There were days when I met shapes which reminded me of her, and which resembled her. These shapes led me on through the streets of strange towns, into railway stations, into trains, as in a tangled dream. There were other days when I saw how useless my search was. Then I sat inactive. Anywhere, in a park, or the garden of a hotel, in a waiting room. I looked into myself, and tried to make the picture live in me. But it was now shy and elusive. I could not sleep. I only nodded for a quarter of an hour or so on railway journeys through country unknown to me. Once in Zurich, a woman followed me. A pretty, rather forward woman. I scarcely noticed her, and went on, as if she were air. I would rather have died at once than have shown sympathy for another woman, even if only for an hour. Damn, dude, alright, calm down. I felt that my destiny was leading me on. I felt that fulfillment was nigh. I was mad with impatience to think that I could do nothing to help myself. Once at a station, I think it was Innsbruck, I saw, at the window of a train which was just moving out, a form which reminded me of her. I was miserable for days. And suddenly the form appeared again to me, at night in a dream. I woke up with a feeling as of shame, realizing the fruitlessness and senselessness of my chase, and I went home by the most direct route. Emil has a very interesting take on mommy issues. Usually one would expect them to be, similar to their own maternal figure. No. This is his best friend's mother. Yes. Even best friend is an interesting term, because the relationship between Demian and Emil is kind of ephemeral. They haven't spoken much in years, but Freud would have a field day with this man. A couple of weeks later, I matriculated in the University of H. Everything disappointed me. The course of lectures I followed on the history of philosophy was just as vain and mechanical as the common ground of student life. Everything was so much according to pattern. One person did as the other, and the boyish faces, although inflamed with a forced gaiety, looked so distressingly vacant. It was like the gloss of a ready-made article. I was free. I had the whole day to myself and lived quietly in a beautiful old building outside the town. I had a couple of volumes of Nietzsche on my table. I lived with him, feeling the loneliness of his soul, sensing his destiny, which impelled him onwards unceasingly. I suffered with him, and was happy that there's been one who had gone his way so inflexibly. I guess that makes sense. I mean, there's an entire song about Jesse's mom. Late one evening, I wandered through the town. An autumn wind was blowing, and I heard the student societies singing in their taverns. Tobacco smoke rose in clouds through the open windows. Songs were being roared out loudly and tensely. But the noise did not soar up. It fell dully on the ear, and was lifelessly uniform. I stood at a street corner and listened. Oh, that's what it was. Stacy's mom, and that's what. Yep, conflating songs, such as it goes. Where were we there? I stood at a street corner and listened. From two cafes, the flood of song rolled forth into the night. Everywhere, community, everywhere, this huddling together, everywhere, this unloading of the burden of destiny, this flight into the warm proximity of the herd. Two men passed me by slowly. I caught a phrase of their conversation. "Isn't it just like an assembly of youths in a Negro village?" said one. "They all do the same things. Even tattooing is in fashion. Look, that's the young Europe." That was Got blindsided by that one. Very nearly let it go through. Yikes. The voice rang suggestively in my ear. I followed behind the two in the dark street. One of them was a Japanese, small and elegant. I saw his yellow, smiling face shine under the lamp. Okay. Hess, calm down. We don't need to just have a full-on parade of these. We've gotten through a whole book and it's been mostly fine. Don't remind us that we are in early 20th century's Germany. Just calm down. We almost got through. We almost got through without aspersions. I'll ignore the infatuation with Nietzsche. Like, yeah, we just got hammered by it all at once. The other spoke again. "Well, I don't suppose it's any better with you in Japan. People who do not follow the herd are everywhere rare. There are a few here, too." Every word went through me. Felt pleasure and dread. I recognized the speaker. It was Demian. Oh, god damn it. "You don't want to look up to this one." In the windy night, I followed him, and the Japanese, through the dark streets, listening to their conversation and enjoying the ring of Demian's voice. It had the old tone, the old beautiful sureness and tranquility, and it had the same power over me. Now, everything was right. They had found him. At the end of a street in the suburbs, the Japanese took leave and closed a house door behind him. Demian took the way back. I had remained standing and awaited him in the middle of the street. With beating heart, I saw him approaching erect and walking with an elastic step. He wore a brown raincoat and carried a thin stick hanging from his arm. He advanced without altering his regular stride until he got right up to me. He took off his hat, displaying his old, bright face with a determined mouth and the peculiar brightness on the broad forehead. Demian, I called. He stretched out his hand to me. So it's you then, Sinclair. I expected you. Did you know I was here? I did not know for certain, but I hoped it might be true. I saw you first this evening. You have been behind us the whole time. You recognized me then at once. Of course. You're very much changed, to be sure, but you have the sign. We used to call it the mark of Cain, if you recollect. It is our sign. You have always had it. For that reason, I became your friend. But now it is clearer. I did not know. Or rather, I did. I once painted a picture of you, Demian, and I was astonished that it was also like me. Was that the sign? That was it. It's fine that you are here now. My mother will be glad as well. I started. Your mother? Is she here? She doesn't know me a bit. Oh, she knows of you. She will know, without even my asking her, who you are. You haven't let me hear from you for a long time. Oh, I often wanted to write, but nothing came of it. For some time past, I felt I should find you, but I was waiting for it every day. He pushed his arm through mine, and we went on. Tranquility seemed to emanate from him and pass on to me. We were soon chatting together, as formerly. We mentioned our school days, the confirmation class, and that unlucky meeting of ours in the holidays. Only no mention was made of the earliest and closest bond between us, of the affair with Frank Cromer. Unexpectedly, we found ourselves in the middle of a singular and ominous conversation. Having recalled Demian's discourse with the Japanese, we spoke of student life in general, and of what we had branched off to something else, and from that we had branched off to something else, which seemed to be rather out of the way of the former trend of our talk. Nevertheless, from Demian's manner of introducing the subject, there seemed to be no lack of coherence in our conversation. He spoke of the spirit of Europe, and of modern tendencies. Everywhere, he said, reigned a desire to come together, to form herds, but nowhere was freedom or love. All this life in common, from the student clubs and choral societies to the state, was an unnatural, forced phenomenon. The community owed its origin to a sense of fear, of embarrassment, to a desire for flight. Inwardly, it was rotten and old, and approaching a general breakup. Community, Demian said, is a beautiful thing, but what we see blossoming everywhere is by no means that. It will arise anew from the mutual understanding of individuals, and after a time the world will be remodeled. What is now called community is merely a formation of herds. Mankind seeks refuge together, because men have fear of one another. The masters combine for their own ends, the workmen for theirs, and the intellectuals for theirs. And why are they afraid? One is only afraid when one is not at one with oneself. They are afraid because they have never had the courage to be themselves. A community of men who are afraid of the unknown in themselves. They all feel that the laws of their life no longer hold good, that they are living according to outworn commandments. Neither their religion nor their morals conform to our needs. For 100 years and more, Europe has simply studied and built factories. They know exactly how many grams of powder it takes to kill a man, but they do not know how to pray to God. They have no idea how to amuse themselves, even for an hour. Look at these students drinking in their tavern, or take any place of amusement where rich people go. Hopeless! My dear Sinclair, no cheerfulness, no serenity can come of all that. These creatures, who move about so uneasily in crowds, are full of fear and full of wickedness. No one trusts the other. They adhere to ideals which have ceased to exist, and stone everyone who proposes a new one. I feel that there are troubles ahead of us. They will come, believe me. They will come soon. Of course, the world won't be bettered. Whether the workmen kill the manufacturers, or whether the Russians and Germans shoot at one another, it will only be a change of proprietors. But it will not be in vain. It will free the world from the chains of present-day ideals. There will be a clearing away of Stone Age gods. The world, as it is now, wants to die. It wants to perish, and it will. Okay, so, there's a a little bit of prescient speech going on in this, given that this was written, circa World War I-ish. He's a little ahead of his time here, just a little, as well as making a comment on the younger generation having no attention span or able to find enjoyment in themselves. He's complaining about about TikTok kids a full 100 years before they've existed. So that's good to know that some things never change. And what will happen to us then? I asked. To us? Oh, perhaps we shall perish as well. They can also murder people in our position. Only we shall not be entirely wiped out. The will of the future will realize itself from what remains of our influence, or with the aid of those of us who survive. The will of humanity will make itself felt, which our Europe has for a long time past tried to drown in its sale yard of scientifically manufactured articles. And then it will be seen that there is nothing in common between the will of humanity and that of our present-day communities, of the states and peoples, of the societies and churches. And what nature wills with man is written in the individual few, in you and in me. It is found in Jesus, in Nietzsche, for these the only important currents of thought which naturally can alter their course each day. There will be a place when the present-day communities break up together. Yeah, it's a tale as old as time. One generation will complain about the younger generation being unable to be comfortable with themselves. The younger generation will complain about the older generation being completely out of touch. That is eternal. This isn't anything new. Just the specifics of the arguments are new. But the heart and soul of the arguments, that's... As long as there have been generations, there have been arguments against in both directions. It was late when we made a halt before a garden by the river. It is early when we had our first band of the evening. We live here, said Demian. Come and see us soon. We shall expect you. I cheerfully wended my long way home through the night, which had become cold. Here and there, brawling students were lurching through the town. I had often felt, sometimes with a feeling of privation, sometimes with scorn, the contrast between their curious sort of gaiety and my lonely life. But now, tranquil and strong in a sense of secret power, I felt as never before how little that affected me. How far removed was their world from mine. I reminded myself of officials of my native town, worthy old gentlemen who clung to memories of the semesters they had passed in drinking, as they would to memories of a blissful paradise, and who practiced a cult, calling up reminiscences of the vanished freedom of their university life with all the seriousness which some poet or other romantic would devote to an account of his childhood. Everywhere the same. Everywhere they sought liberty and happiness behind them, in the past, for fear of being reminded of their own responsibility, of being warned that they were not striking out for themselves, but merely going the way of all the world. 2 or 3 years passed in drinking and jollification, and then they crept under the common shelter and became serious gentlemen, in the service of the state. Yes, it was rotten. Our whole system was rotten, and these student sillinesses were less stupid and not so bad as 100 others. However, when I reached my distant dwelling and went to bed, all these thoughts had flown. Everything else was in suspense, as I looked forward to the fulfillment of the promise made to me that day. As soon as I wished, in the morning if I liked, I could see Demian's mother. Let the students hold their drinking bouts and tattoo their faces. Let the world be rotten and on the brink of ruin. What had that to do with me? I was waiting for one single thing, that my fate might meet me in a new picture. I woke up late in the morning from a deep sleep. The day broke for me as a solemn festival day, such as I had not experienced since the Christmas celebrations of my boyhood. I was full of a deep unrest, yet entirely without fear. I felt that an important day had broken for me. I saw and felt the world around me changed. It was full of secret portent, expectant and solemn. Even the gently falling autumn rain was beautiful, full of the quiet, glad, serious music of a festal day. For the first time, the outer world was in tune with my inner world. Then, it is a feast day for the soul. Then, living is worthwhile. No house, no shop window, no face in the street disturbed me. Everything was as it had to be, but did not wear the empty features of every day and of the habitual. It was like expectant nature, standing full of awe to meet its fate. Thus, as a little boy, I used to see the world on the morning of a great feast day, at Christmas or at Easter. I had not known that this world could still be so beautiful. I had been accustomed to living shut up in myself, and to content myself with the idea that my understanding for the outside world had been lost. That the loss of glistening colors was inevitably connected with the loss of childish vision. So the hour came when I found again that garden in the suburbs, at the gate of which I had taken leave of Max Demian the night before. Concealed behind trees in a grey mist of rain stood a little house, bright and homely. Tall flowers stood behind a big glass partition, and behind shining windows were dark room walls with pictures and bookcases. The front door led immediately into a little hall, and a silent old servant, black with white apron, showed me in and took my raincoat from me. She left me alone in the hall. I looked about me. I looked round, and immediately I was in the middle of my dream. On the dark wood wall above a door, under glass and in a black frame, hung a picture I knew well. My bird, and the golden yellow hawk's crest, forcing its way out of the sphere. Much moved, I remained standing. My heart felt glad and sorry, as if, in that moment, everything I had done and had experienced came back to me as answer and fulfillment. Like a lightning flash, a crowd of pictures passed through my soul. My home, the house of my father with the old stone crest above the arch of the door, the boy Demian drawing the crest, myself as a boy, fearful under the evil spell of my enemy Cromer, myself as a youth at the table in my little room at school, painting the bird of my dream, the soul caught in a web of its own weaving, and everything up to this moment found echo in me again, and was confined, answered, approved. With misty eyes I stared at my picture and read in the book of my soul. My glance dropped. In the open door under the picture of the bird stood a tall lady in a dark dress. It was she. I could not utter a word. The beautiful woman smiled at me in a friendly way, beneath features like her son's, timeless and without age, full of an animated will. Her look was fulfillment. Her greeting meant homecoming. In silence, I stretched out my hands to her. She seized both mine with her strong and warm ones. "You are Sinclair. I knew you at once. I am very glad to see you." Her voice was deep and warm. I drank it in like sweet wine. And now I looked up in her tranquil face, into the black eyes of unfathomable depth. I looked at her fresh, ripe mouth, queenly forehead, which bore the sign How glad I am, I said to her and kissed her hands. I believe I have been on my way all my life long, but now I have come home. She smiled in a motherly way. One never comes home, she said gently, but where friendly roads converge. The whole world looks for an hour like home. She gave expression to what I myself had felt on my way to her. Her voice and her words were like those of her son, and yet quite different. Everything was more mature, warmer, more assured. But just as Max in years past had made on no one the impression of being a mere boy, so his mother did not look like the mother of a grown-up son. So young and sweet was the breath of her face and her hair, so smooth her golden skin, so blossoming her mouth, more queenly still than in my dream she stood before me. Her presence was love's happiness. Her look was fulfillment. This, then, was the new picture, in which my fate displayed itself, no longer severe, no longer isolating, but mature and full of promise. I took no resolutions, I made no vows, I had attained an end, I had reached a point of vantage on the way from which the further road displayed itself, broad and lovely, leading on to lands of promise, shaped by treetops of happiness near at hand, cooled by gardens of delight. Come what might, I was happy to know of this woman's existence in the world, to drink in her voice, to sense her presence, whether she would be to me mother, mistress, goddess, what mattered it, as long as she was present, as long as my way lay near to hers. She indicated my picture of the hawk. You have never given Max more pleasure than by sending this bird, she said musingly, and I was pleased as well. We expected you, and when the picture arrived, we knew that you were on the way to us. When you were a little boy, Sinclair, my son, came one day from school and said, "There's a boy who has the sign on his forehead. He must be my friend." That was you. You have not had an easy time of it, but we had confidence in you. Once in the holidays, when you were at home, Max met you again. You were at that time about 16 years old. Max told me... I interrupted. Oh, that he should have told you that. It was the most miserable time I have had. Yes, Max said to me, now Sinclair has the hardest time before him. He is making an attempt to escape to the community. He has even taken to drinking with the others, but he won't succeed in that. His sign has become dulled, but it shines secretly. Was not that the case? Oh, yes, it was, exactly. Then I found Beatrice, and finally a guide came to me. His name was Pistorius. For the first time it was clear to me why my boyhood was so bound up with Max's, why I could not break away from him. Dear lady, dear mother, at that time I often thought I should have to take my life. It's the way so hard for everyone. She let her fingers stray through my hair as gently as if a light breeze were blowing. It is always hard to be born. You know, it is not without effort that the bird comes out of the egg. Look back and ask yourself, was the way then so hard? Only hard? Was it not beautiful as well? Could you have had one more beautiful, more easy? Yeah, this got very weird very quickly. Wasn't really... Yeah. I shook my head. It was hard, I said, as if in sleep. It was hard until the dream came. She nodded and looked at me penetratingly. Yes, one must find one's dream. Then the way is easy. But there is no dream which endures for always. Each sets a new one free. To none should one wish to cleave. I started. Was that already a warning? Was that already a warding off? But no matter. I was ready to let myself be led by her and not inquire after the end. I do not know, I said, how long my dream is to last. I wish it would be forever. My fate received me under the picture of the bird, like a mother and like a mistress. To it I belong, and to no one else. As long as the dream is your fate, so long must you remain true to it, she said in earnest confirmation of my remark. I was very sad, and I wished ardently to die in this hour of enchantment. I felt the tears, for what an interminably long time I had not wept, rise irresistibly and overmaster me. I turned violently away from her. I stepped to the window and looked out, my eyes blinded with tears, away over the flower pots. I heard her voice behind me. It rang out calmly and yet was so full of tenderness, like a cup filled to the brim with wine. Sinclair, what a child you are! Of course your fate loves you. One day it will belong to you entirely, just as you dreamt, if you remain true to it. I had composed myself and turned my face to her again. She gave me her hand. I have a few friends, she said, smiling. A very few, very close friends, who call me Mother Eve. You may call me so as well, if you like. She led me to the door, opened it, and indicated the garden. You will find Max out there, I think. I stood under the tall trees, stunned and stupefied. I knew not whether I was more awake or more dreaming than ever. Softly, the rain dripped from the branches. I went slowly through the garden, which stretched far along the riverbank. At last I found Demian. He stood in an open summer house, naked to the waist. He was doing boxing exercises with a little sack of sand hung from a beam. Was that strictly necessary? Astonished, I remained standing there. Demian looked magnificent. Okay, no, we're going all in on this. His broad chest, the firm, manly head, the uplifted arms were strong and sturdy. The movements came from the hips, the shoulders, the joints of the arm as easily as if they bubbled out of a spring of strength. Demian, I called, what are you doing there? He laughed gaily. Indeed. I am exercising. I promised to box with the little Jap. The fellow is as agile as a cat, and naturally just as sly. But he won't be able to manage me. I owe him just one little beating. He drew on a shirt and coat. You have already seen Mother? He asked. Yes, Demian. What a marvelous mother you have. Mother Eve. The name suits her perfectly. She is like the mother of all being. He gazed for an instant musingly in my face. You know her name already. You ought to be proud, young friend. You are the only one to whom she has said it in the first hour's acquaintance. From this day on, I went in and out of the house like a son and a brother, but also like a lover. When I closed the gate behind me, even when I saw the tall trees of the garden emerge in the distance, I was happy. Outside was reality. Outside were streets and houses, human beings and institutions, libraries and lecture rooms. Here, inside were love and the life of the soul. Here was the kingdom of fairy stories and dreams, and yet we lived by no means shut off from the world. In thought and word, we often lived in its midst, only on another plane. We were not separated from the majority of creatures by boundaries, but rather by a different sort of vision. Our task was to be, as it were, an island in the world, perhaps an example, in any case to proclaim that it was possible to live a different sort of life. I, who had been isolated for so long, learned to what extent community of feeling is possible between people who have experienced complete loneliness. I no longer desired to be back at the tables of the happy, at the feasts of the merry. I no longer felt envious or homesick when I saw others living in a community. And slowly I was initiated into the mystery of those who bore the sign. We who bore the sign were probably justly considered by the world as peculiar. Yes, mad even, and dangerous, for we were awake, or we were waking, and our endeavor was to be more and more completely awake. Whereas the others strove to be happy, attaching themselves to the herd, the opinions and ideals of which they made their own, taking up the same duties, making their life and happiness depend on common interests. True, there was a certain greatness, of vigorousness in their endeavor. But whereas, from our point of view, we who bore the sign carried out the will of nature as individuals and as men of the future, the others persisted in a stubbornness which hindered all progress. For them, mankind, which they loved just as we did, was something already complete, which must be maintained and protected. For us, mankind was a distant future, to which we were all on the way. No one could imagine this future, neither did its laws stand written in any book. Yeah, we're getting... This is throwing all sorts of mixed signals here. We've got him railing against the sheeple, the herd mentality, but at the same time, he's going and calling them too, like, conservative and stuck in their ways. On his side, he's saying that he's awake, he's woke, but not in the way that we would consider the term. No, he's Joe Rogan woke. He's red-pilled, and I'm very conflicted and confused about all this. Real Chuny Hours is a good way to put it. I'm special. I'm different from the rest. The people that are with me and like me are different from the rest. Don't mind that we're all like each other. We're different. Sinclair, Emile, this isn't the way it should have been. Besides Mother Eve, Max, and myself, there belong to our circle in a greater or less degree of intimacy many seekers of very various sorts. Many of them were going along their own special paths. Oh, we're having connection drops. Hang tight. Comcast, why are you doing me dirty today? We just need to get through this book. It's not that long. Please, just hang tight for a little while. Just internet. Yeah, everything is good on my end. Speed tests are checking out. No, it just is something on the upstream jump that decides that it doesn't like me. Alright, I think we are stabilized. Live there. Let's get a refresh here to make sure we're looking good. I'm not seeing additional dropped frames. Okay, I think we're all right. Yeah, Comcast doesn't want me waking up. We can't find the truth. Alright, we'll take it from the top of that paragraph. Besides Mother Eve, Max, and myself, there belong to our circle in a greater or lesser degree of intimacy many seekers of very various sorts. Many of them were going along their own special paths, had set up special aims, and adhered to special opinions and duties. Amongst these were astrologers and Kabbalists. also an adherent of Count Tolstoy, and all kinds of tender, timid, sensitive people, followers of new sects, men who practiced Indian cults, vegetarians, and others. With all these, we had really nothing of a spiritual nature in common, except the esteem which each accorded the secret life dream of the other. Some were in closer contact with us, such as those who traced the searchings of mankind after gods, and the new ideals in the past, and those whose studies often reminded me of my friend Pistorius. They brought books with them, translated for us texts from ancient tongues, and showed us illustrations of ancient symbols and rites. They taught us to see how all the ideals of mankind up to the present have their origin in dreams of the subconscious soul. Dreams in which humanity is, as it were, feeling its way forward into the future, guided by premonitions of the future's potentialities. So we went through the religious history of the ancient world, with its 1,000 gods, to the dawn of Christianity. The confessions of the isolated saints were known to us, and the changes of religion from race to race. And from all the knowledge we thus acquired resulted a criticism of our era and of present-day Europe, of this continent which, through enormous exertions, had created powerful new weapons for humanity, only to fall finally into a deep spiritual devastation, the effects of which were at last being felt, for it had gained the whole world, only to lose its own soul. There were with us believers as well, advocates of doctrines of salvation, in the efficacy of which they were very hopeful. There were Buddhists who wished to convert Europe, and disciples of Tolstoy and of other confessions. We, in our narrow circle, listened, but accepted none of these doctrines except as symbols. We who bore the sign had no cares as regarded the formation of the future. To us, every confession, every doctrine of salvation appeared in advance dead and useless. Our whole duty, our destiny was, we felt, to attain to self-realization, in order that in us nature might find scope for its full activities, and that the unknown future might find us ready to fill any role in which should be allotted us. Whether we expressed our opinion in so many words or not, it was clear to all of us that a breakup of the present-day world was approaching, to be followed by a new birth. Demian said to me on more than one occasion, "What will come is beyond conception. The soul of Europe is an animal which has been chained up for an immeasurably long period. When it is set free, its first movements will not display much amiability. But the way it will take, whether direct or indirect, is not of importance, provided that the soul's true need is realized. This soul, which has been deluded and dulled for so long, then our day will come. Then we shall be needed, not as guides or new lawgivers. We shall not live to see the new laws, but rather as volunteers, as those who are ready to follow and to stand wherever fate shall call us. Look, all men are ready to perform the incredible when their ideals are threatened. But no one comes forward when a new ideal, a new, perhaps dangerous and uncanny impulse of spiritual growth declares itself. We shall be of those few who are there, ready to go forward. For that purpose we been singled out, just as Cain was marked with the sign to inspire fear and hate, to drive the men of his time out of a narrow, idyllic existence into the broad pastures of a greater destiny. All men whose influence has affected the march of humanity, all such without differentiation, owe their capabilities and their efficacy to the fact that they were ready to do the bidding of destiny. That applies to Napoleon and Bismarck. The immediate purpose to which they direct their energies does not lie within their choice. If Bismarck had understood the social democrats and had thrown in his lot with them, he would have been a prudent fellow. But he would never have been the instrument of fate. The same applies to Napoleon, to Caesar, to Loyola, to all of them. One must always look at such things from the point of view of biology and evolution. when the changes which took place in the earth's surface transferred to the land animals which lived in water, and vice versa, then those specimens which were ready to fulfill their functions as instruments of fate brought new and unheard of things to pass, and were able, through new adaptations, to save their kind. Whether these specimens were the same that had previously been conservatives and preservers of the status quo, or the eccentrics and revolutionaries, is not known. They were ready to be used by fate, and for that reason were able to help their race through a new stage of evolution. What we do now, for that reason, we want to be ready. Okay, we're getting into very uncomfortable territory with some of these discussions, some of these allusions. So let's continue with the mind that this was a very long time ago. Mother Eve was often present when such conversations took place, but she did not join in. Yeah, exactly. When viewed through the context of when and where this was written, there are very uncomfortable ideas that are... You have to wonder where inspiration was given and taken for this or from this. That's a homework project for another time, to look into those sort of influences. I'm just here to read it. Mother Eve was often present when such conversations took place, but she did not join in. For each of us who chose to express his thoughts, she was, as it were, a listener and an echo, full of confidence, full of understanding. It appeared as if our ideas all emanated from her and returned to her again. My happiness consisted in sitting near her, in hearing her voice from time to time, and in participating in that atmosphere of maturity and of the soul which surrounded her. She felt immediately when a change was taking place in me, when my soul was troubled, or when a renewal was in progress. It seemed to me as if the dreams I had in my sleep were inspired by her. I often related them to her. She found them quite comprehensible and natural. There were no peculiarities which she could not clearly follow. For a time, I had dreams which were like reproductions of the day's conversation. I dreamed that the whole world was in revolt, and that I alone, or with Demian, tensely waited the signal of fate. Fate remained half concealed, but bore, somehow or other, the traits of Mother Eve, to be chosen or rejected by her. That was fate. Sometimes she said with a smile, "Your dream is not complete, Sinclair. You have forgotten the best part." And sometimes happened that I recalled it then, and I could not understand how I had come to forget any of it. At times I was discontented and was tormented by desire. I thought I could not bear to see her near me any longer without taking her in my arms. She noticed that immediately. Once, when I had stayed away for several days and had returned distraught, she took me aside and said, "You should not give yourself up to wishes in which you do not believe. I know what you wish. You must give up these desires, or else surrender yourself to them completely. If one day you are able to ask, convinced that your wishes will be fulfilled, then you will find satisfaction. But you wish and repent again, and are afraid. You must overcome all that. I will tell you a fairy tale." And she told me of a youth who was in love with a star. He stood on the seashore, stretched out his hands, and prayed to the star. He dreamed of it, and all his thoughts were of it. But he knew, or thought he knew, that a star could not be embraced by a man. He held it to be his fate to love a star without hope of fulfillment, and he created from this thought a whole life poem about renunciation and mute, faithful suffering which should better him and purify him. But his dreams all went up to the star. Once again he stood at night by the seashore. On a high cliff he gazed at the star, and his love for it flamed up within him. And in a moment of great longing he made a spring, throwing himself into the space to meet the star, but at the moment of leaping, the thought flashed through his mind, "It is impossible!" And so he was dashed to pieces on the rocks below. He did not know how to love. Had he had the strength of soul at the moment of leaping to believe in the fulfillment of his wish, he would have flown up and have been united with the star. Okay, so once again, Hesse reminds us that some things are forever, and a parasocial relationship is nothing new to the modern age. No, 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 no. People were in love with stars. "Love must not beg," she said, "nor demand either. Love must have the force to be absolutely certain of itself. Then it is attracted no longer, but attracts. Sinclair, I am attracting your love. As soon as you attract my love, I shall come. I do not want to make a present of myself. I want to be one." This is his friend's mother, by the way. Just additional reminder and context. On a later occasion, she told me another fairy story. There was a lover who loved without hope of success. He withdrew entirely into himself, and thought his love would consume him. The world was lost to him. He saw the blue sky and the green wood no longer. He did not hear the murmuring of the stream or the notes of the harp. All that meant nothing to him. He became poor and miserable. But his love grew, and he would much rather have died and have made an end of it all than renounce the chance of possessing the beautiful woman whom he loved. Then he suddenly felt that his love had consumed everything else in him. It became powerful and exercised an irresistible attraction. The beautiful woman had to follow. She came, and he stood with outstretched arms to draw her to him. But as she stood before him, she was completely transformed. And with a thrill, he felt and saw that he had drawn into his embrace the whole world, which he had lost. She stood before him and surrendered herself to him. Sky and wood and brook, all was decked out in lovely new colors, all belonged to him, and spoke his tongue. And instead of merely winning a woman, he had taken the whole world to his heart, and each star in the heaven glowed in him, and twinkling communicated desire to his soul. He had loved, and therefore had found himself. But most people love only to lose themselves thereby. Yeah, occult is a very good way to put this. Yikes. My whole life seemed to be contained in my love for Mother Eve. But every day she looked different. Many times I felt decidedly that it was not her person for which my whole being was striving, but that she was a symbol of my inward self, and that she wished only to lead me to see more deeply into myself. I often heard words fall from her lips which sounded like answers to the burning questions asked by my subconscious self. Then, again, there were moments when in her presence I burnt with desire, and afterwards kissed objects she had touched. And by degrees, sensual and unsensual love, reality and symbol merged into one another. Then it happened that I could think of her at home in my room, with quiet fervor. I thought I felt her hand in mine, and my lips pressed to hers. For I was at her house, gazing up into her face, talking with her and listening to her voice, and I did not know whether it was really she or whether it was a dream. Yeah, you know what? Let's see if I remember what my toggles are, because it might be time. It might indeed be time. Where are we? Where are we? Where were my hotkeys? Where were my hotkeys? Yeah, there's a whole journey with this. Here it was. Here it was. Yeah, Now, the question was, how was this... there was. Forgot that we had toggles. Now is the time. Now is the time. Where were we? I began to foresee how one could have a lasting and immortal love. In reading a book, I had acquired new knowledge, and it was the same feeling as a kiss from Mother Eve. She stroked my hair and smiled at me. I sensed the perfume of her warm, ripe mouth, and I had the same feeling as if I had been making progress within myself. All that was important and faithful for me seemed to be contained in her. She could transform herself into each of my thoughts, and every one of my thoughts was transformed into her. I feared that it would be torture to spend the 2 weeks of the Christmas holidays separated from Mother Eve, with my parents at home, but it was no torture. It was lovely to be at home and to think of her. When I returned to Herfer, I remained away from her house another 2 days, in order to enjoy the security and independence of her actual presence. I also had dreams, in which my union with her was accomplished by way of allegory. She was a sea, into which I, a river, flowed. She was a star, and I myself was a star on my way to her. We felt drawn to one another. We met and remained together always, turning blissfully round one another in close-lying orbits to the music of the spheres. I related this dream to her when I visited her again after the holidays. "It is a beautiful dream," she said softly. "See that it comes true." Oh, she's encouraging this. There came a day in early spring that I shall never forget. I entered the hall. A window stood open, and the heavy scent of hyacinths, wafted by a warm breath of air, permeated the room. As no one was to be seen, I went upstairs to Max Demian's study. I knocked softly on the door and entered without waiting for permission, as I was in the habit of doing with him. The room was dark. The curtains were all drawn. The door to a little room adjoining stood open, where Max had set up a chemical laboratory. From there came the bright white light of the spring sun, shining through rain clouds. I thought no one was there, and pulled back one of the curtains. There, I saw Max Demian, sitting on a stool by a curtained window. His attitude was cramped, and he was oddly changed. The thought flashed through me, "You've seen him like this once before." His arms were motionless at his sides, his hands in his lap, his face inclined slightly forward, with open eyes, was without sight, as if dead. In the eyes there glimmered dully a little reflex of light, as in a piece of glass. The pale face was self-absorbed, and without any expression, save that of great rigidity. He looked like a very ancient mask of an animal at the door of a temple. He appeared not to be breathing. The recollection came to me. Thus, exactly thus, had I once seen him, many years ago, when I was still quite a boy. Thus had his eyes stared inwards. Thus his hands had been lying motionless close to one another. A fly had been crawling over his face, and he had then, 6 years ago perhaps, looked just as old and as ageless. Not a wrinkle in his face had changed. I was frightened, and went softly out of the room, and down the stairs. In the hall I met Mother Eve. She was pale and seemed tired. I had not seen her like that before. A shadow came through the window. The bright white sun had suddenly disappeared. "I went into Max's room," I whispered hastily. "Has anything happened? He's asleep or absorbed. I don't know what. I once saw him like that before." "But you didn't wake him." No, he did not hear me. I came out immediately. "Mother Eve, tell me, what is the matter with him?" She passed her hand over her forehead. "Don't worry, Sinclair. Nothing has happened to him. He has retired into himself. It will not last long." She got up and went out into the garden. Although it had begun to rain, I felt that I must not follow her. So I walked up and down in the hall, inhaling the scent of the hyacinths, which dulled my senses, and gazing at my picture of the bird over the door. I felt oppressively the odd shadow which seemed to fill the house that morning. What was it? What had happened? Mother Eve came back soon. Raindrops hung in her dark hair, and she sat down in her easy chair. She was very tired. I went to her, bent down, and kissed the raindrops in her hair. Her eyes were bright and soft, but the raindrops tasted like tears. "Shall I go and see how he is?" I asked in a whisper. She smiled weakly. "Don't be a child, Sinclair," she admonished loudly, as if to relieve her own feelings. "Go now and come back later. I can't talk to you now." I went. I walked out of the house and out of the town towards the mountains. The thin rain was falling obliquely, and clouds were driving at a low altitude under heavy pressure, as if in fear. Down below there was hardly any breeze, but on the heights above a storm seemed to be raging. Several times the sun, pale and bright, broke for an instant through the steely gray of the clouds. There came a fleecy yellow cloud driving across the sky. It collided with the gray cloud wall, and in a few seconds the wind formed a picture of the yellow and blue, of a bird of giant size which tore itself free from the blue melee and with wide fluttering wings disappeared in the sky. Then the storm became audible, and rain mixed with hail rattled down. A short burst of thunder with an unnatural and terrific sound cracked over the whipped landscape. Suddenly, or immediately, after the sun broke through, and on the mountains close at hand above brown woods glistened, pale and unreal, the fresh snow. When I returned, after several hours, wet from the rain and wind, Demian himself opened the front door to me. He took me with him up to his room. A gas flame burned in the laboratory. Paper lay about. He appeared to have been working. "Sit down," he invited. "You must be tired. It was a terrible storm. It's evident you were overtaken by it. Tea is coming at once." "Something is the matter today," I began hesitatingly. "Zoe, what are you doing?" "Yeah." Let's see. "Something is the matter today," I began hesitatingly. "It can't only be that bit of a storm." He looked at me penetratingly. "Have you seen anything?" "Yes, I saw a picture clearly in the clouds, for an instant." "What sort of a picture?" "It was a bird." "The hawk? Was it that? The bird of your dream?" "Yes, it was my hawk. It was yellow and of giant size. It flew up into the blue-black heaven." Demian took a deep breath. Someone knocked at the door. The aged servant brought in tea. "Take a cup, Sinclair, do. I don't think it was by chance you saw the bird." "Chance? Does one see such things by chance?" "Well, no. It means something. Do you know what?" "No, I only feel it means a violent shock, the approach of fate. I think it will affect all of us." He walked violently up and down. "The approach of fate!" he exclaimed loudly. "I dreamed the same thing myself last night, and my mother yesterday had a premonition portending the same thing. I dreamed I was going up a ladder, placed against a tree trunk or tower. When I reached the top, I saw the whole country. It was a wide plain with towns and villages burning. I cannot yet relate everything, because it isn't all quite clear to me." "Do you interpret the dreams as affecting you?" I asked. "Me? Naturally. No one dreams of what does not concern him. But it does not concern me alone. You are right. I can distinguish tolerably well between the dreams which indicate agitation of my own soul, and the others, the rare ones, which bear on the fate of all humanity. I have seldom had such dreams, and never one which I can say that it was a prophecy, and that it has been fulfilled. The interpretations are too uncertain, but this I know for a certainty. I have dreamed of something which does not concern me alone, for the dream belongs to others, former ones I have had. This is the continuation. These are the dreams, Sinclair, in which I had the premonitions which I have already mentioned to you. We know that the world is absolutely rotten, but that it is no reason to prophesy its ruin, or to make a prophecy of a like nature. But for several years past, I've had dreams, from which I conclude, or feel, or what you will, which then give me the feeling that the breakup of an old world is drawing near. At first, they were simply faint presentiments, but since they become more and more significant. Even now, I know nothing more than that something big and terrible is approaching, which will concern me. Sinclair, we shall go through the experiences of which we have so often talked. The world is about to renew itself. It smacks of death. Nothing new comes without death. It is more terrible than I had thought. Frightened, I looked at him fixedly. Can't you tell me the rest of your dream? I begged timidly. He shook his head. No. Just, the door opened and Mother Eve entered. There you are, sitting together. Children, I hope you aren't sad. She looked fresh. Her fatigue had quite vanished. Demian smiled at her. She came to us as a mother comes to frightened children. We aren't sad, Mother. We were simply trying to solve the riddle of these new signs. But that is of no importance. What is to come? We'll be here all of a sudden, and then we shall learn what we need to know. But I did not feel happy. When I said goodbye and went down alone through the hall, I felt that the hyacinths were faded and withered, reminding me of corpses. A shadow had fallen over us. All right, that brings us to the end of chapter 7, and the last chapter we have ahead of us, which at this point, I have no idea if things could get more, or if we're on the trend to things calming down as we approach the ending. But in either case, let's go ahead and take a few minutes, stand up, stretch your legs, top up your drinks, and we'll be back for the last chapter. This next one is a shorter one, a little less than half of the length, so we should probably be finishing right around on time tonight. I'm not too stressed about that. So, we'll be back in just a little bit. Thanks. All right, we are back. In celebration of a newly strange book coming to nearly an end, I have needed to get a fresh drink and crack open a fresh bottle that I found for a decent price, actually. And once again, I wish for a right-hand justification, but no, we cannot have nice things. I really should get a little bit of a text, or a backdrop to the text here. It doesn't highlight very well against my arm here. Anyway, Woodford Reserve, a very, very nice bourbon. That hits just nice. Alright, so let's approach the end of Demian. We're at the last chapter of the evening. Of this book, in fact. We suffered through a increasingly strange turn of events. The relationship between Demian's mother and Sinclair was, yeah, one of those. It had, yes, it was very culty. Yes, it had a whole lot of insinuations and other bits that were reminiscent of when we were reading Genji. A lot of ick that was just hidden behind a thin veil. But, hopefully, generally, the chapters here have different focuses. So hopefully this last chapter will not be quite so... But if it is, it's only 6 pages, so we shan't have to suffer for too terribly long. Alright, so let's get back into it with Chapter 8, The Beginning of the End. Yeah, the direction it's going and the time that everything is happening in is very interesting. When you frame this from a historical perspective of what else was happening around this time period, it's very interesting to see where this is going to be going. It's certainly loaded down with context. All right. It had been decided that I should remain in for the summer semester. Instead of staying in the house, we were almost always in the garden by the river. The Japanese, who, by the way, had been thoroughly beaten in the boxing match, was away, and the disciple of Tolstoy was also missing. Demian and I procured a horse, and went for long rides every day. I was often alone with his mother. Sometimes I wondered greatly at the peaceableness of my life. I had been so long accustomed to being alone, to practice renunciation, to fight toilfully my own battles, that these months in Herfer seemed to me like a time passed on a dream island, where I might live tranquilly in beautiful, enchanted surroundings. I felt that this was a foretaste of that new, higher community on which we meditated, and now and then I was seized by a deep feeling of sadness, for I knew that this happiness could not last. I was not destined to breathe in the fullness of peace and comfort. I needed torment to spur me on. I felt that one day I should wake up from these dreams of beautiful love pictures to find myself standing once more alone in the cold world of others, where for me there would be only loneliness and fighting, no peace, no community of spirit. Oh, calm down, Emil. Then I yielded myself to the charms of Mother Eve's presence. My feeling for her was now doubly tender. I was glad that my fate bore still these beautiful, tranquil features. Yeah, I'm starting to think Emil might be an honorary Henry. Just considering it. Not quite sure yet, but it's coming up there. The summer weeks passed quickly and easily. Already the semester was drawing to a close. Leave-taking was near. I dared not think of it, and did not, but clung to the beautiful days like a butterfly to a honeyed flower. That was my period of happiness, the first fulfillment of my life's wishes, and my reception into the League. What was to come next? I would again have to fight my battles, be consumed by longing, have dreams, be alone. At this time, the feeling, the foretaste of separation came over me so strongly that my love for Mother Eve blazed up suddenly, causing me pain. My God! How soon would the time come to say goodbye, and I should see her no more hear her firm step in the house, should find no more her flowers on my table. And what had I attained? I had dreamed, and had lulled myself in comfort instead of winning her, instead of fighting for her and drawing her to me for always. All that she had said to me about genuine love crossed my mind. Hundreds of fine, suggestive words, 100 tender invitations, promises perhaps. And what had I made of them? Nothing! Nothing! I took up a position in the middle of my room, collected my whole conscious self together and thought of Eve. I wished to concentrate the forces of my soul in order to let her feel my love. In order to draw her to me, she was to come, longing for my embrace. My kisses were to suck insatiably the ripe fruit of her lips. I stood tense, until fingers and feet became stiff with cold. I felt force was going out of me. For a few seconds, something seemed to take shape with me. Something bright and cool. I had for a moment the sensation as if I carried a crystal in my heart, and I knew that was myself. A cold chill pierced to my heart. As I woke out of my fearful state of tension, I felt something was approaching. I was exhausted, to the point of death, but I was prepared to see Eve step into the room, burning with passion, ravished. The sound of horses' hoofs clattered down the long street rang nearer and nearer. then suddenly ceased. I sprang to the window. Below, Demian was dismounting. "What is the matter, Demian? Nothing can have happened to your mother." Wrong person talking. "What is the matter, Demian? Nothing could have happened to your mother." He did not listen to my words. He was very pale, and perspiration ran down both sides of his forehead over his cheeks. His horse was flecked with foam. He tied the reins to the garden fence. Then he took my arm and walked with me down the street. "Have you already heard the news?" I had heard nothing. Demian pressed my arm and turned his face to me, with a dark, compassionate, singular look. "Yes, old man, now we're in for it. You know of the strained relations with Russia." "What? Is it war? I had never believed it." He spoke in an undertone, although no one was near. "It is not yet declared, but it's war. Rely on it. I haven't worried you lately, but I have seen 3 new omens since. It will be no foundering of the world, no earthquake, no revolution. It's war! You will see how that strikes everybody. It will be a joy to people. Everyone already rejoices that hostilities are about to commence. So insipid has life become for them. But you will see now, Sinclair, that is only the beginning. This will perhaps be a great war, a very great war. The new dispensation commences, and for those who adhere to the old, the new will be terrible. What will you do?" I was perplexed. Everything sounded so strange and improbable. I don't know. And you?" He shrugged his shoulders. "As soon as mobilization orders are out, I join up. I am a lieutenant." "You? I had no idea of that." "Yes, it was one of my adaptations. You know, I have never wanted to appear out of the ordinary, and have rather done too much in order to be correct, to do the right thing. In 8 days, I think, I shall be already in the field." "For God's sake!" "Look here, old fellow, you mustn't take things so sentimentally. At bottom, it certainly won't give me pleasure to order machine-gun fire to be turned on living creatures, but that is a secondary matter. Now, each one of us will be seized by the great wheel of fate. You as well. You will certainly be called up." "And your mother, Demian?" Then, for the first time, I recollected what I was doing a quarter of an hour before. How the world had changed. I had summoned together all my force in order to conjure up the sweetest picture, and now fate had suddenly put on a new, horrible mask. My mother? We need have no cares for safety. She is safe, safer than anyone else in the world today. You love her so very much. You knew it, Demian?" He laughed brightly and without any embarrassment. "You child! Naturally I knew it. No one has yet called my mother Mother Eve without loving her. By the way, how was that? You have called to either her or myself today, haven't you?" "Yes, I called. I called to Mother Eve. She felt it. She suddenly sent me away. I was to come to you. I had just told her the news about Russia." We turned back, scarcely speaking. He untied his horse and mounted. I first realized in my room how exhausted I was by Demian's message, and even more so by my previous spiritual exertions. But Mother Eve had heard me. My thoughts had reached her. She would have come herself if... How wonderful all this was, and how beautiful! Now it was to be war. Now that we had what we had so often spoken of was about to happen, and Demian had known so much in advance. Strange that the world's stream would no longer flow somewhere or other by us, that now it was suddenly flowing through us. That fate and adventure had called us, and that now, or soon, the moment would come when the world would need us, when it would be transformed. Demian was right. One should not be sentimental over it. Only, it was strange that I was now to experience that lonely thing, fate, with so many, with the whole world Good then. I was ready. In the evening, when I went through the town, every corner was alive with bustle and excitement. Everywhere, the word war. I went to Mother Eve's house. We had supper in the summer house. I was the only guest. No one spoke a word about the war. But later, shortly before I left, Mother Eve said, "Dear Sinclair, you called to me today. You know why I did not come myself, but don't forget, you know the call now, and if ever you need someone who bears the sign, call me again." She rose and went out through the gloaming into the garden. Tall and queenly, invested with mystery. She stepped between the trees. The foliage ceased its whispering at her approach. And over her head glimmered tenderly the many stars. I am coming to the end. Events marched quickly. War was declared. Demian, who looked strange in uniform with a silver-gray cloak, went away. I brought his mother home. Soon after, I also said goodbye to her. She kissed me on the lips and held me a moment on her breast, and her large eyes burned steadily close to mine. And all men were like brothers. They had in mind their country and their honor, but it was fate. They peeped for a moment into the unveiled face. Young men came out of the barracks, stepped into trains, and on many a face I saw a sign. Not ours, a beautiful and dignified sign, signifying love and death. I, as well, was embraced by people I had never seen before. I understood and responded gladly. It was an atmosphere of intoxication in which they moved. Not that of a fated will, but the intoxication was sacred. It was due to the fact that they had all looked into the rousing eyes of destiny. It was already nearly winter when I went to the front. At first, in spite of the sensation of the bombardment, I was disappointed with everything. Formerly, I had often wondered why people so seldom were able to live for an ideal. Now I saw that many, yes, all men, are capable of dying for an ideal, provided that such an ideal is not personal, not chosen of their own free will. For them, it had to be an ideal accepted by and common to a great number. But with time, I saw that I had underestimated men. Although service and a common danger renders them uniform, I saw many, living and dying, approach fate magnificently. Not only in an attack, but the whole time, many, very many of them had a fixed, far-away look, rather like that of a person possessed. A look which indicates entire ignorance of the end pursued, and a complete surrender of self to the unknown. No matter what they might believe and think they were ready, they were there in case of need. Out of them would the future be formed. And, however strongly the world's attention appeared to be focused on war and heroic deeds, on honor and other old ideals, however distantly and unnaturally sang the voices of humanity, all this was merely the surface. Just as the question with regard to the foreign and political aims of the war was superficial. Deep down, below the surface of human affairs, something was in process of forming. Something which might be a new order of humanity. For I could see many, many such died at my side, to whom the understanding was brought home that hate and rage, murder and destruction had no connection with the real object of the war. Not the object, just as the aims in view was purely a matter of chance. Their deepest and most primitive feelings, even their wildest instincts, were not actually directed against the enemy. Their murderous and bloody work was an expression of their own inner being, of their cleft soul, which wished to rave and kill, to destroy and die in order to be able to be born anew. A giant bird was fighting its way out of the egg, and the egg was the world, and the world had to go to ruin. One night, in early spring, I was doing sentry duty in front of a farm we had occupied. The wind was blowing in fitful gusts, shrieking and moaning according to the vagaries of its mood. Over the high Flanders sky rode an army of clouds. Somewhere or other behind was a suspicion of moon. I had been restless throughout the whole of that day, troubled by cares which I could not precisely define. Now, at my dark post, I thought with fervor of the picture of my life up to that time, of Mother Eve, of Demian. I stood leaning against a poplar, staring into the agitated sky, the mysterious quivering brightness of which soon resolved itself into a series of pictures. I felt by the odd slowness of my pulse, by the insensibility of my skin to wind and rain, by the lively wakefulness of my inner being, that a guide was near me. In the clouds, a large city could be seen, out of which millions of men were streaming, spreading in swarms over the broad countryside. In their very midst there appeared the mighty figure of a god, as big as a mountain, with glittering stars in its hair, and with the features of Mother Eve. Into it disappeared the processions of men, as into a gigantic cave, and were lost to view. The goddess shrank down on the ground. The sign on her forehead glittered brightly. She seemed to be under the influence of a dream. She closed her eyes, and her large features were twisted in pain. Suddenly she cried out, and out of her forehead sprang stars which hurried in lovely arcs and half circles over the black sky. One of the stars rushed noisily through the air to meet me, as if seeking me out. With a crash it burst into 1,000 sparks, lifting me off my feet and hurling me onto the ground. The world broke up thunderously about me. Did bro just get artilleried? They found me close to the poplar, covered with earth and wounded in several places. I lay in a cellar. Guns growled and rumbled overhead. I lay in a cart and was jolted over empty fields. For the most part, I was either asleep or unconscious. But the more deeply I slept, the more strongly I felt that I was being drawn, that I followed at the will of a force over which I was not master. I lay on straw in a stable. It was dark. Someone trod on my hand. But my inner self willed to go further. The mysterious force drew me on. Again I lay in a cart, and later on a stretcher. Even more strongly I felt in me the command to go forward. I was conscious only of the pressure, the force which seemed to be controlling my journeying thus from place to place. At last, I was there. It was night. I was fully conscious, and I felt strongly the secret attraction and power which had brought me to that place. Now I was lying in a room, on a bed made up on the floor. I felt I had arrived at the place to which I had been called. I glanced around. Close to my mattress was another, on which someone was lying, someone who bent over and looked at me. It was Max Demian. I could not speak, and he either could not or would not. He only looked at me. A lamp which hung over him on the wall cast a light on his face. He smiled at me. For what seemed an immeasurably long time, he gazed unwaveringly into my eyes. Slowly, he inclined his face toward me until we almost touched. "Sinclair," he said in a whisper. I signaled to him with my eyes that I understood him. He smiled again, almost as if lost in compassion. "Little one," he said, smiling. His mouth now lay quite close to mine. Softly he continued to speak. Can you still remember Frank Cromer?" he asked. I winked at him, and could even manage to smile. "Sinclair, old man, listen. I shall have to go away. Perhaps you will need me once again, on account of Cromer or something. When you call me, I shall not come riding on a horse, or in a train. You must hearken to the voice inside you. Then you will notice it is I, that I am in you. Do you understand? And one other thing.
Mother, you said that if ever you were ill, I was to give you a kiss from her, which she gave me. Close your eyes, Sinclair. I obediently closed my eyes. I felt a light kiss on my lips, on which there was a trace of blood, which never seemed to stop flowing, and then I fell asleep. In the morning, I was awakened to have my wounds dressed. When at last I was properly awake, I turned quickly to the mattress at my side. A stranger lay upon it, a man on whom I had never before set eyes. The bandaging hurt me. All that was happened to me since hurt me. But my soul is like a mysterious, locked house. And when I find the key and step right down into myself to where the pictures painted by my destiny seem reflected on the dark mirror of my soul, then I need only stoop towards the black mirror and see my own picture, which now completely resembles him, my guide and friend. The end. Well, that was an ending. Let's actually pull this back up to the first page, because I rather like the cover of this one. Yeah, it was rather an abrupt ending, but I guess it was to be expected. Everything about this book was sort of apropos of nothing. It just was full of non sequiturs all through. So I can't really think of anything to dislike about that. And you're right. Yeah, World War I will do that to you. Like, it shell-shocked an entire generation of Europe. Like, an entire generation. So this fits. It has that feel of someone who was trying to go through and assemble the pieces of what life was before and realizing what there is afterward, at the end. What is left to pick up afterward. The vagueness is intentional here. And I think is for the best. We don't need to know what happened to all the characters. We don't need to know what happened to Sinclair. He was wounded. Okay. But that's not the important part. Yes, the story's been all about him, but his end isn't the important bit. And yeah, it also goes a long way to explain the odd tone of most of the book, because this is written as a sort of autobiographical thing. And we're dropping connection again. Thank you. Thank you so very much, Comcast, for blessing us with shitty connection tonight. We'll get there. Eventually. Please, stop dropping frames. So, yeah. Please, come on. Alright, I think... Well, no, we're still having issues. Fantastic. Ping is good. Well, I say that, but now I'm dropping pings. Thank you. Comcast. Seriously. I should be getting more than one upstream. I should be getting more than 0.5 upstream. Holy shit. I don't know whether it is or not. It looks like I'm still dropping a lot of frames, but if it's looking better, then great. I think I'm still buffering by about almost a minute, I think. Almost 2, judging by Twitch. Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet. Nope, alright, now we're back to green. No longer dropping frames. We might be recovering here shortly. Okay, I think we are out of the woods. Yep, alright, so let's try and have a little bit of a wrap and consideration of the book. Yes, there were parts of it which were a little on the weird side as we were going through, but it was really mostly just that second to last chapter that was really weird. Which almost feels like it was almost a cop-out If you think, because the build-up throughout that was the blending in Sinclair's mind and conception of an ideal personage that was blending Demian and his own mother as sort of the ideal humanity to strive for, whether it be for personal reasons or the pursuit of their own ideals. And that second to last chapter sort of transposed that ideal image directly onto Demian's mother. So she's kind of placed right in the middle of things, and was a transitory figure. Things got weird at the end there. That's understandable. It's when we think that it's the fallout of being shell-shocked. I'll give him a little bit of a pass, but bro was weird. I do think he deserves honorary Henry status. It was a little much, a little too much for me. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack. A lot of, when we mentioned coming of age early on, we didn't really see the whole of it. Like, we saw through the various stages of development. We saw as he was a very young man, a boy, starting to leave the auspices of the happy family home. And then as he was developing further, as he lost his way at school and was trying to find his own way there and took very, very obviously wrong turns, went all in on things that had no business going all in on. But it's all very familiar. Yes, he dialed things up to 11 before the dial even was invented, but it's a very familiar story in a very extra sort of way. We see people today that are going through similar development and growth and their own personal journeys of discovery and self-realization, self-actualization, that unfortunately today, many of the people that are having that sort of journey are looking in the wrong places, much like Sinclair did. Where for Sinclair, he was looking for effectively cults and in the tap rooms. Today, they're looking at, like, young men are looking at Andrew Tate and Joe Rogan. They're obviously patently wrong, but who are you to tell them that they're wrong? Because then they'll just go even more into it. So, the same people that are following Asmongold and stuff, they're there to feel something. They're not there to feel good about themselves or others, but they're just there to feel something. And that's, unfortunately, the way things go. And that's, I don't know, as someone who's gone through their own journey, those of you listening in, I'm sure, have gone through your own journeys as well. It's part of growing up. We find our own way. Yeah, it's hilarious. He was very unfunny, and he was the guy for MMA or UFC or whoever it was. That was it. And then he started off as a when he took to podcasting, it was like, hey, I'll listen to anybody, and anybody's got a seat at the table, take a mic and go, to whatever it became. It was never really a open voice at the table. It was more a, let's hear the craziest have come out and legitimize them by giving them a microphone. Ugh. It's too good of a drink to be talking about such a shit stain. Exactly. All right, so it was an interesting book. To get back to the source topic, it was interesting. It was thought-provoking, and when you place it in the context of the times, you place it in the context of the place, things that were developing at the time, which eventually we were thrown head first into with the last chapter, it all makes a sort of sense. It was an awkward time in Germany. It was an awkward time in Europe. It was an awkward time in the world. To be growing into a man at that point was previously mostly unprecedented. There hadn't been global conflict. There hadn't been globalization. There hadn't been really much of anything like that. It was nationalism and things, and the identity was the identity. To grow and be forced to grow beyond that was definitely a product of the time. And yes, it is a fantastic example of the struggles that are timeless. The details of the struggles, yeah, those will shift. The different key points, but at its heart, the soul of the problem, the soul of the conflicts and the resolutions, they're the same as they've always been. It's part of growing beyond the family, growing beyond what you've known, and becoming your own person, having your own arguments, having your own journey and dreams, and following them. This leaned pretty heavily into berating the herd mentality, the comfort of being part of a community, and the virtues of being one of the outsiders. Very chuny, but a little before the time there. But it's not bad, just a presentation. I think there's benefit to having read something like this. Yeah, exactly. The lack of community is always a problem. It's just the solution is, I mean, is there a real solution that has been universally accepted yet? Aside from building community? Not really, because half the problem is the people that are most in need of community are those that are so against community, the idea of it. So it's a rather vicious cycle as we go through. And we hope that people will grow and find their own answers. But as evidenced by looking outside with your eyes, very, very many never actually find an answer of their own. Yeah, exceptionalism is a very potent drug. It's in all the manners. It'll bring the euphoria, but there's a crash after, inevitably. All right, let's see. Let's see if that's about all we've got for tonight. Our next reading, we're going to be going back to the Devil's Dictionary next time, because I rather like the idea of having a comfort book that we can jump into for just some no pressure, just silly fun time in between books. So on Tuesday, we'll be reading from the Devil's Dictionary. I think we got through C last time. So I've got a bookmark for where we'll jump back in, but it's a no pressure book. If you can drop in for a little bit and have some good cynical fun, feel free to join us. Akamos and I both found that was actually a very good book to help detox from watching current events, having eyes. It's a bad day to have eyes, but it's a good day to read from some good old-fashioned satire. So, we'll be doing that on Tuesday. And then we'll find something to read on Friday. I'm not sure yet what it'll be, but it'll be our next project. And then from there, we'll transition on Saturday for our continued reading of Hyperion in our Unarchived series, which is getting very good. Well, it was not even getting good. It is just plain good, and probably will continue to be good. I'm pretty hyped for Hyperion. Damn it. I'm excited for Hyperion. It's a good book. So, that'll be it for tonight. Let's go ahead and see if there's anyone out there who is also reading, because I do like to keep our raids on theme. There's not a whole lot of readers out there on Twitch, but it certainly helps for us to look out for each other. So, let's see, who do we got? Let's see, there's the guy that was reading to Moss last time we went through. Let's see. We were with Ascurus last night, so we probably should try and keep things... try and spread things out. This person is reading The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It's a first time reading. Okay, I think that's probably where we want to go. So, we're going to see if... the Dan Simmons book. The Hyperion is the current unarchived reading. I think in Twitch it might still be up in the VODs, because I haven't gone through the process of purging out VODs for things that are unarchived for Twitch, because they only keep them for 7 days. So, yeah, I highly recommend Hyperion. If you can join us on Saturdays, all the better. Those are not going to be available on the YouTube, unfortunately, because copyright's a bitch. But anyway, we're going to try and raid into, assuming she lets us, Ayane Dawn. This is her first reading stream, and so I am very keen on supporting her. Looks like we're going to be able to go through. So, give her our best. All the support in new readers is always welcome. As always, thank you very much for joining us. If you have not yet, if you're over on YouTube, a subscription to the channel and a like on the stream lets the algorithm know that we are up to some fun things. If you're over on Twitch, we're just getting started around the end of January, and we are very near the 25 follower mark, which is where we'll need to make a decision on how we want to approach affiliate. I have no idea. We'll see. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. This has been Demian by Hermann Hesse, and that will be all for tonight. Give Ayane our very best and encourage her in her adventures in reading on Twitch. All right, good night, and thank you very much.